this is Joe Bolen, and welcome back to our lessons on VisualBasic.net. In this lesson, we're going to learn about how to navigate Visual Studio and learn where we'll be creating our Visual Studio programs. So let's get into Visual Studio and learn about its environment. Okay, I have right now showing the start page of the professional version of Visual Studio. You may have different one and may not be showing the start page. If you don't see the start page, you can come up to your menu bar to view and click on the start page, and that'll bring the start page for you to view. We can create from the start page a new project, or go back to an older project and open it up, and we'll see a list of recent projects that we worked with on that. Let's talk about, first of all, the menu bar area. We have the File one, which is a very important area. We'll go to the File menu bar, and there we'll choose Save All to save things. We'll close out our project, and we can also open and close projects as well. The View area is where we can bring other windows up if I miss a window. And we'll also see that we have the Tools area we've been in, to the Options. And one of the things that I want to bring out in this lesson more than anything else is we have the Windows option, and one of the options in the Windows menu bar area is to reset the Windows layout. So if we mess things up, we can reset it back by going to Windows, Reset Windows Layout. And it'll ask if you're sure you want to do this. You say yes, and you'll get your system back to where we started from. Okay, I have the start page. I have right now collapsed the toolbox on the side for my environment. On the far right is what's called the Solution Explorer, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Let me temporarily create a project, so I'm going to click on the New Project link here off the Start menu. And if you don't have the Start menu showing, go up to File and then go to New Project. I'm going to just hit New Project off the Start page. And you'll see that the .NET framework in Visual Studio gives us a number of templates to work with and to create our programs. We want to make certain that we're working in the Visual Basic environment. There are other languages on the system. C# is one of them that's nice to use as well. And we're going to be working, though, with the Visual Basic components. And we're going to be in the Visual Basic Windows desktop environment. And initially we have down at the bottom a solution, or I should say right now a form project name that we can work with. And we're going to be working on a Windows form application. Now at the top you see I have a .NET 4 framework that I'm going to be working with. If I'm working with Visual Studio 2010 or a more recent version, I can change those options on that. In fact, in the 2013 version, our default is a 4.5.1 of the framework. So we can back level our framework as we're doing development for certain target audiences. Also right now, Microsoft has available at this time of this recording, it has version 4.5.2 that we can choose on that. This one has some enhancements over the current 4.5.1 version. For most of the things that we're working with, you can feel comfortable to use the version 4 framework. The framework on version 4 appears on many computers nowadays. If you have a Windows operating system level 7 or even a tablet or operating system at 8.1, you'll at least have the framework 4 available to you. And therefore, if you're going to share your program with somebody else, they won't have to install any extra components when you give them the program, because they'll already have at least the framework 4 on there. If you need some of the extra features, though, just hit your drop down here and choose from a higher level to use from. I'm going to stay right now at 4 for our lessons that we're going to be doing. Now I'm just going to go with the default name. The name should not include spaces. This is a special kind of area, then we don't want to add spaces into our name. A lot of authors and other people will put spaces in here, but it's actually better not to have any spaces in our name. And I'm going to click OK. We're just going to go with the default right now. And you see that I'm greeted with a Windows form, and a lot of code has actually been generated by pulling that in. Also, we see that I'm in the active tab right now, and it says Design. I'm in the Windows Designer for the form, where I can add code, change the size, and do different things that I need to the form itself. Behind that is also code that we can code for actions and things we want to have working with this form. The form is actually what's called a class. This happens to be under the class called Windows Forms, and that class has properties, and it has events that we can have with that, and we'll work with that. So we have the Windows Designer form. Now let me take you over to the Solution Explorer side on my right side, and you'll see that right now, because I'm in the form designer area for the first form, it's highlighted as Form 1 VB. We set that in the options so that this highlights to whatever active window that I'm, or active tab that I'm in, and we can see right now I'm currently showing as my active window tab area the Windows Form 1 VB in the designer mode. Now I can double click on this, or I can come up here to view code to see the code behind the form. I'm going to do the view code button so you can see that. And now we see that I have two tabs, and right now my current tab is the code Form 1 VB, not the design area, but the actual code area on it. Right now there's very little there other than to state that I've got a class called Form 1, and I can jump back and forth between the different environments by clicking on the tabs to get to the area. Now if I were to do any changes to my code or to the designer on my project, you'll see that the tab will change in terms of what we'll see there. In fact, I'll put a little dim statement here. In fact, right away it has changed. I'm going to finish it out here. Dim value as string. Okay, I'll finish out that code, and you'll see that a little red dot appears on this. In other Visual Studio versions, it might be an asterisk that appears. This states that we have changed the code and we haven't saved it yet, and so we want to save all our code. And if I hit the save all, which I'm going to do now, you'll see these little dots or asterisks go away. Let me hit the save all. Right now it's asking for where to save it and the name. I'm just going to go with the defaults right now because I'm going to delete it later on. But we have it saved, and now those little red dots or asterisks have gone away. Let's take a look now at our area on the far left. You'll see I have a toolbar and data source hidden over the side. And let me go to the designer, and I'm going to click on the toolbox area. And what I like to do when I'm working with the Windows Designer is I want to hit the pin to the desktop so that it doesn't jump back. And I'm going to hit the pin and lock it in place. And now I have my toolbox on the side where I'll bring in my different controls to work with. Also, I tend to want to collapse down all the other different components and controls other than the common controls. So I just come over here and click and bring those down so I have a little neater looking toolbox area. So I leave just basically the common controls available to me till I need to go to something else. Now, one of the things I want to bring to your attention is right now the toolbox is showing. If the toolbox did not show up for you, you can always bring the toolbox back by going up to your View tab and selecting to show the toolbox on that and bring it back. Now, here's another thing to remember. The toolbox may not show your tools if you're not in the Windows Designer. Right now I'm in the Windows Designer, but let me go back over to the code and the toolbox will change and you won't see the tools. So remember, if you do not see the tools, you may not be in the designer. This is also true of some of the other windows we'll be working with, like the data set designer area, you have to have the particular part of that showing for your tools to show up. So you've got to be in the designer for your toolbox to show the tools. One other thing I want to bring to your attention is as we go over to our Solution Explorer. The Solution Explorer right now is set to show the solution name. In this case, I call the solution Windows Application 1. If we had not set that in the options area when we started, this might not show up. We'd only see the project name. So we see both the solution and project name. And think of a solution as an outer container in which we can have a number of projects. In this case, we're going to have only one project per solution, but we could have more than one project in a solution. Down the line on my Solution Explorer will be the different classes and modules that I'll add. Resources will be available that I'll put there as we develop a project. And so when I need to look at something, I can highlight the particular area that I want to look at, double click on it, or if I want to see the code behind it, I can come up and click on the View Code area. So the Solution Explorer helps me navigate my different components that I have in my environment. Now right now I have a Form 1 showing, and down below is what's called the Properties window. If I had more controls installed and showing, I would go to my Components drop-down window, and I could select from the components in the Components drop-down window to work on the properties of that control. Now, I have in the Properties box panel area a button called Properties. Right now I'm showing it in alphabetical sequence, and you'll see that the Windows form has a lot of different attributes or properties. One of the property names is its name itself. In this case, it defaulted to Form 1. And one of the other ones, especially with Windows Form, is the caption title area called Form 1, which appears on the title area of our form. So we'll be setting different things. We'll change the size of our form, and we'll also be changing the font of our form, and maybe adding a special icon to our project so it has a special icon for our form. So take a look at all the different properties of your control that you might be working with. The more you know about all the different controls properties will give you more options to design something that you really like. Also, we have a events button, and all controls, or I should say most controls, have an event associated with it. In case of the Windows form, the default event is the load event on that, and we can double click on the load event and create code behind it, or we could come over to the Windows form itself and double click on it, and it would create the code, the load event. In fact, I'll do it for you. I'll double click on the form on the left side in the Windows Designer, and it will create the load event, which is the default for the Windows form. So it quickly helps me create the events that I want to have associated with a control. Remember though, once we come back and look at the designer, there were a lot of events I could have chosen. There are things like the key press, key up, and maybe I would have my mouse hovering over control. These are the different ones that we can look at and add to our programming code behind the scenes on it. So a control has events as well as properties to it. Now, we've looked at our properties area, we've looked at our Solution Explorer, we have our toolbox. Now, I also have over on the side here a data source one for this one, and I'm going to pin it for a moment. Whoop, let me get that back. In fact, I lost the view. No, it's down here. And right now, my data source does not have anything in it, and I can do an add data source if I'm working with a database, maybe an Access database or SQL database or SQL Express database. And one of the things different that I want to bring to your attention on the menu bar, in the older versions we had a option for data, And that data tab area or button area option off the menu bar is gone. It's been moved into view. So if you want to follow along and you see me go to view data source, it'll be through this way, but you'll have the option right off your menu bar for data on that. So that is a difference in this version of the system. And if I happen to hit the X instead of auto hide, I can come up to view and go to look at other windows, and I'll see data sources, and I can click on that and bring that back. Okay, so we have different things we can look at. On that, we can move them around as we want and relocate them. Let's say I misplace where I want to put it. Maybe I get it down here. Remember, I can always come back over to Windows, Reset Layout, confirm it, and it'll get things back to where I need to have it. Okay, well, we've done a lot this time. And so you need to get in, learn a little bit about your version of Visual Studio, take a look at the Solution Explorer, especially get comfortable with the Properties panel and learn how to navigate around the Properties area. You'll also need to learn how to go over to the toolbox when you have the designer up so you can bring the different components and tools to your form that you're working with. We'll look at more of those things as we need them in later lessons. But right now, get yourself familiar with the Visual Studio environment. And until next time, get your hands dirty in the code.